Welcome to Music NFT News. I'm your host, Marc Moglen. Today, we're with Kevin Brown of FanCircles. Kevin, how are you doing today?
I'm good, thank you.
Well, as we start with our side A of Music NFT News, focusing on the business aspects of music and NFT, tell me what FanCircles is all about.
Yeah, so FanCircles started around 5 years ago as a subscription-based fan club platform, really. We work with quite a number of different artists and television shows and celebrities and anyone with fandom, I guess, really, more than anything. Initially based on subscribing with either in-app purchases within apps or with your credit card, and now moving on to sort of validation of wallets on Web3 to enable you to unlock content and features based on ownership of an NFT.
That sounds great. And how did you get to that? I mean, in terms of focusing in on fandom and now moving into this emerging NFT and Web3 space. Can you give me some of the background on how you got here?
Yeah, sure. No, it was an interesting journey, really. I was in a tech company. So my previous exit in company terms was an affiliate marketing company called Affiliate Window, which I started in '99 and finished in or exited to a media company in 2011. Doing completely the opposite after that, which was going into band management from the corporate world seemed a natural sort of movement for me. But also, I think entering the world of music at a time, and I think the same is true of now, but there's very little data in the hands of the artist and the management, and everything is owned by other people, i.e. Facebook or Spotify or Live Nation. And really my main mission was to say, well, you know, how can the industry run if you don't know who your customers are? And how do you get ownership of that data and start to look at the industry critically and say, well, it's broken at the moment. I don't believe I can fix it myself, but I do believe that I can work with individual artists and help them fix the problem for them. So I think on a one-by-one basis, we can help artists. As an industry, you know, there's obviously a lot of problems within it.
So that sounds like one of the key issues you're tackling is how to expose the data to the artists you work with. Is that right? And kind of giving them more insights into who's coming to their platform and how they're engaging with their work. Is that basically right?
That's right. Yeah, but also the reach as well. I mean, one of the biggest problems with social media being the key way to communicate with fans is that the reach is pathetic. I mean, when you're talking about, you know, less than 1% of people are seeing posts, unless of course you promote them and pay Facebook for that. The problem within social media is that, and the music industry, is that there are far more people that follow artists than actually buy a ticket, buy the merchandise, buy the album. So it kind of, the numbers don't work. And a good example being, you know, Taylor Swift has 76 million people on Facebook, whereas Apple have 9 million people on Facebook. So if you're trying to advertise to that group of people and you're Taylor Swift, then the costs of paying Facebook to reach the right people is just out of reach completely. So you're kind of stuck with the organic reach of Facebook. So it's not a very good way to communicate with your fan base if you've got to pay and ultimately direct them to possibly your album on Spotify, which also doesn't pay very well. So the economics of everything just don't work very well for an artist with social media and streaming. And I think, you know, what frustrates me the most is the carrot and stick that seems to be constantly held there for music artists, and trying to solve that really a little bit for them.
And what would you say to Taylor Swift if she said, well, I'm trying to engage my fans more, I'm evaluating your solution, you know, how could I jump on and use FanCircles to the advantage?
Yeah, I think what's quite interesting is the first thought that jumps into people's heads is, well, why are they going to download another app? But there's an interesting sort of argument on that. As an artist gets bigger and bigger, you travel further to go and see their concert. You don't expect them to be in your local town hall anymore. So on one hand, you're saying that, or people are saying that, well, why would people download an app to support and to be in a community of Taylor Swift fans? But on the other hand, promoters know very well that as an artist gets bigger, you will travel further. So this clearly tells you that people will go where the artist tells them to go, rather than you need to be everywhere. And I think that's something that's very much sort of missing in terms of the advice from social media marketing companies, which say you need to be on every platform. I don't believe that to be true at all. It depends on the artist, and it depends on the stage of the career of that particular artist as well. If you're an established artist, then the fans come to you. If you're beginning, I think that's a very different thing that sadly I can't crack. I don't know how to get that first 1,000 fans into a venue or to buy your album. That's I guess the biggest issue with music anyway. That first few people.
That may be more difficult than the next 10,000 fans. I don't know.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's the problem, isn't it? And I think that's where the carrot and stick of the sort of social platforms, but particularly the streaming platforms, come into play, because I think it's quite normal for a music artist to think, well, if I put my music on Spotify and Apple, then the whole world can listen to it. But the point is, that's not what really happens. And it's not even the 80-20 rule. We're talking a very small percentage of 1% of artists get recognition on Facebook, on Spotify.
Well, even if you achieved a few streams on Spotify, how would you identify who they are? Are they eligible to, real fans? And I think that gets into the next question is, which you're the specialist in, but what does it mean to be a fan, and how important is that when you're considering, say, launching an NFT music project? Because someone clicking and hearing a stream on Spotify does not qualify as a fan by a long shot, does it? And so what's your take on that? And what does fandom mean today? Like, how do you define a fan?
Yeah, I think we've got a little bit stuck, haven't we, with vanity metrics being the main thing that seems to matter these days. If you've got millions of followers on Instagram, then it can be very mistakenly thought that you've got millions of fans. But I don't think there's any artist out there that's got millions of fans. Truly, if you really think about the size of some of the biggest tours out there, and that could be anybody from Guns N' Roses through to Coldplay, they still don't have millions of fans.
Well, those are also gameable systems, right? Like, there's ways to get millions of fans on Instagram by using bots and other services and so on, right? Like, it's hard to even see what is real.
It's really
without
hard
doing deeper analysis.
And you're right. Plays on streaming don't represent fans. I think plays on streaming represent the number of people that would listen to radio. But the problem is, when you have random access radio, i.e. Spotify and the likes, all of a sudden it takes out that need to go and purchase an album, or a single, of which we used to measure things on. So now we've ended up measuring things on number of plays rather than number of people actually actioning, going further and buying the single or the album, which doesn't mean that there will be people buying singles and albums, but it just means that we're talking about a metric that encompasses, well, look, everybody listens to the radio, right? Pretty much. Only really, yeah, that's true. Or everybody previously sort of listened to radio, and those same people are the same people that listen to Spotify. Right. Only a very small percentage of those people, 1 to 2% at the very most, of people that have ever been music aficionados, or people that bought the album, buy the t-shirt, go to the concert. So already you're 99% out or 98% out on the figures in terms of fandom versus casual listeners. So the metric is wrong to even begin with deciding whether you've got fandom or not. There's plenty of music on Spotify. I'm using Spotify to really talk about
streaming generally.
But there's plenty of music.
I don't mind beating up on Spotify. That's fine. Don't worry.
No, I mean, there's no, yeah, I mean, I don't really see where they're going. So apart from podcasts, which clearly shows what the problem is. I think if you're looking at Spotify or streaming and thinking that you've got fans, you have to think about the type of music that's being listened to. There's plenty of background music that's listened to in shops. You can I talked to a guy over at South by Southwest 2 or 3 years ago, pre-COVID, and overheard a conversation. He just played a rock gig at I think it's called the British Embassy House or something like that at South by. I overheard him saying that he got 7 million plays a month. I was really interested because it was a rock band. But he said, after speaking to him, he said, no, I don't get 7 million plays from my rock music. I get 7 million plays because I write acoustic background music and get it onto coffee shop playlists.
Okay.
That's genius. So he said, I don't like it, but I make money from it because it's background music.
But could he fill a venue when he attempted to?
As far as his rock band, I mean, I don't know where that's at the moment or where it was going, but it was, I doubt, it would, at the time, it was probably doing venues of 100 to 150 people. So it just shows that you can make music from Spotify, but in his particular case, and I think it's quite common, it's the mainstream, I call it elevator music, really. Mainstream sort of elevator background music is what actually gets plays on Spotify, which is, that's not the art of being an artist, right? That's trying to pander to the algorithms and the plays that actually come from Spotify, which is, on the whole, it's split between two areas, really. We've got over 50% is archive legacy music owned by Sony, Warner, and Universal. A lot of it is background music, but actually very, very, very little of it is fandom-based music. There's plenty of.
So how do you spot a fan in the wild? What tells you someone's a fan?
If they're wearing the T-shirt. And I think, if you look at punk bands, if you look at metal bands, if you look at rock bands, they wear the T-shirt, and I think that shows fandom more than anything ever. It's interestingly, it's not very often you see a Drake fan in a black Drake T-shirt, but you will see fans wearing Depeche Mode T-shirts or Guns N' Roses T-shirts. So I think, despite it also being a fashion item, you also know that bands like that, or even Dave Matthews Band, that we don't know, by the way, over in the UK, he's lucky to play, a few thousand capacity venues throughout the whole of the UK where he can fill stadiums over there. I think that's what really defines fandom. People that buy the album, buy the T-shirt, buy the ticket, and it's sadly been really lost in people's thought process. They're looking for plays on Spotify as a measurement of their fandom, and in a lot of cases, that's not reflected at all.
So the artists would do well to, in whatever way, encourage this kind of fandom by encouraging closer affiliation to their brand via merchandise, right? Via albums and vinyl, and via NFTs. And your app tries to bring a lot of this together, right? It tries to service those fans, that subset of your listeners, of your audience, that they really want to follow your stuff. And when you come out with a new song, they want to get access to it. And if they can get backstage to meet you, they want to try to do that, this kind of thing, right?
Yeah, and I think if there's an argument to that, I think the problem for a music artist is that numbers matter, and they shouldn't matter as much as they've been pushed to think they matter. It's been said a million times, but the sort of 1,000 fans theory is correct. But we're all looking now for Instagram followings of hundreds of.
And so for the uninitiated, the 1,000 fans theory, how does that basically go?
Yeah, I mean, for us, I mean, it's very interesting, really. So I'll give an example of even less than that. So we have an artist that we work with, a legacy artist. So they have fandom. They only have 30,000 people on Facebook and Instagram, so not a great social following. They have an app with us, or a platform with us, because it's both web and mobile. The community is so strong in there. There's around about 3,000 people in that community in total who are there free of charge because all of our apps are free to download and be involved with that community. But also they have 380 people paying $149 a year. So all of a sudden, actually they're earning, you know, the good portion of 40,000.
Well, but you only need 6 billion streams on Spotify to get there. So,
well, that's true.
You know,
there you go. Well, that's, I mean, that's the metric, isn't it? So do you try to get an enormous number of streams, which is impossible, or do you concentrate on a small number of fans that will support you? Because this is not about paying for access. This is about support. And I think this gets really confused. I think when you pay for Netflix, you don't care about Netflix. If you pay for a band's fan community, you're supporting them and you're not paying. So it's a very interesting sort of philosophy of how that works and psychology.
well, all things being equal, even if you were, like said, made the same amount of money on streaming audio as you did on your fans, which is a more valuable community to foster? Basically random people all over the world who you can't access, or those who you can have a very close connection with and who actually care about your work? I mean, I think the argument kind of plays itself out such that your fans, even in the case that you're making, you're bringing in some revenue from streaming, like the fans are more important, right?
I think so, but I guess it depends on longevity versus sort of instant gratification, really. So I think if you're looking at sort of, you know, there's nothing wrong with having a song that gets on TikTok and gets millions and millions of plays, because, you know, there are the odd few songs from TikTok that have turned artists into theatre level artists. But the question is, does that last? And only time will tell. But then with fandom, and I think this is found a lot more within certain sectors of music, from hip hop to rock to, as I said before, metal. The fandom in those are, you know, they're lifelong. In fact, if you think about what's cool versus what's not cool, you know, I think probably you could say the least cool band in the world is probably Iron Maiden. But they're not complaining. You know, each tour brings in $185 billion. So, you know, are they cool? I don't think they care if they're cool. The fans are there and everything works. But we don't hear about these figures because they're not publicly listed companies. We hear about what Spotify tells us. We hear about what TikTok tells us. We hear about what the 3 labels tell us. But there's more than one industry within music. One's hidden and one's being told to us by the press. And they're very, very different.
And that concludes our side A of music NFT news. I'm your host, Marc Moglen. We are with Kevin Brown of FanCircles.